Kelly and her cohorts said, no, we can't have an ordinary building grade roof, we need a solar roof. So we are working our way towards certification as the oldest net zero building in North America. We actually are, but we're going to be officially certified. We're actually net positive. So the lights and the heat and the hot water are all complements of the solar roof. And there are sort of panels on the top, but it's not like your traditional solar panels. It's a state-of-the-art technology, thin film technology. I like to call it the lasagna of layers of technology that are up on this roof, and we're so proud of it. And so we're hoping to appeal to people who are interested in sustainability. We have 3 pillars in our group: sustainability, community, and then, what's the third one? I'll think of it in just a minute.
Well, beloved community and the arts.
And what?
And
the arts, beloved community and the arts, of course. So we do have art exhibits. We don't have one going on right now. We also have a monthly music concert, mostly classical, but not totally classical. We've had some jazz, and it is on the 3rd Sunday of every month. How many people are here from Roswell today? All right, if you are here from Roswell, this is your home. It's owned by the city, so welcome home. If you're new or a visitor here, we are so glad to have you always. This is not a museum home. We have 3 museum homes with Smith Plantation, the Barrington Hall, and our sister home, the Bullock Hall. And we wanted something different, so this is an event facility. You can use it for weddings or family reunions, or we have lots of groups who do meetings here. I think the Roswell Historical Society had a meeting here on Thursday. So when we took down the roof, the old roof was actually made of copper. So we got these great big pieces, and Ed, who's a volunteer, brought a trailer over, and we hauled these 8-foot, 10-foot, 12-foot pieces of copper to a secure location. And we sold some of it to pay for the battery for the solar roof, and then we've taken it to a local artisan. And we have these beautiful copper leaves, and then we have small ones that are Christmas ornaments as well. We'll have some of those on display if you're looking for a good Christmas ornament. We do have a membership. We have a great membership, and we have lots of donors and contributors to our concert series and our speaker series. This series is in part put on by, sponsored by Georgia Pacific, Renaissance Bank, and somebody else. We'll think of it. Anyway, we're so glad to have you here. We will have refreshments after, and feel free to get up and use them. The restrooms are right behind me, and there are 2 private restrooms. So, any questions? Thank you for being here. We're delighted. Lynn, we are super excited to have you here. Lynn is a former journalist, former, and pretty former, and retired communications consultant. And this is her gift back to the community. And she does this moderating. I think a few of you that I see in the audience have heard her before and met her before. So Lynn, thank you so much for being here and taking care of our panel. If at any point you cannot hear, just kind of put up a hand and we'll make sure that we speak a little slower.
Absolutely. And thank you to the panel. I've had a chance to get to meet you just a little bit, and you are in for a treat. If you do have trouble hearing us, because everyone understands we have to grow our voices to the back wall, but just to do this, and that'll remind us that we need to raise our voices a bit. We are in a tender space because we are talking about suicide. Nothing could be more difficult for anybody who has had any experience with it. So I ask for you to be present in this room with us today. Be mindful of people around you. And if someone needs a Kleenex or needs you to reach out and just pat their arm or their hand, please don't hesitate to do that, because we are here in community today. I'm going to stand to the side so that you can see our panelists. I'm going to introduce each one of them to you, and as I had a chance to chat with them a little bit, and I've read their bios, so I know what a gift it is to have them with us today, and I think that you will find out that that's the case. Beginning with Lou, I'm going to work myself in this direction, and we will get it together. Please come in and sit. I will wait. Dad, are you thinking of suicide? Luke Moon's oldest son, a U.S. Airman, saw what others hadn't, that his dad was in trouble. His son's question saved Lou's life and set him on a mission to do the same for others. In 2012, he founded the Armed Forces Mission to provide rapid response for those in crisis and training for others to do the same. In 2018, Lou was inducted into the University of North Georgia Alumni Hall of Fame for his work in conducting more than 2,000 successful suicide interventions and training more than 26,000 participants in AFM's Intervene Challenge. Given this man's personal, his military, and his professional experience, it is no surprise that as an Army Reserve chaplain, Lou is the subject matter expert on suicide intervention. He has been part of a range of outreach activities, from participating in public service announcements to serving as a consultant on many committees and with a variety of counseling services. He hopes that one day someone else's son will be able to say, "Dad, what was suicide?" Next, we have Jenny Sparrow. She came to the Link Counseling Center in 1993 to join support groups after her mother's suicide. She was trained by the trailblazer Iris Bolton, retired executive director emeritus of the Link and author of My Son, still the most highly recommended book in the suicide survivor's world. And I have to interrupt my introduction to say to you that this is indeed a special occasion because Iris Bolton is with us today. I'm just going to take her hand. Iris will have the last word today, as she should. But Jenny has led groups and trained facilitators in California, Florida, and here in Georgia. She is the program director of SOS, Survivors of Suicide and Loss Program at the Link Counseling Center in Sandy Springs. She is the former editor and book review chair for the national organization American Associations of Suicidology, which certifies crisis centers in the entire country. She leads an annual training at the Link with Stuart Smith for clinicians and survivors alike who wish to lead support groups to help visits and support suicide awareness in their communities. And then next, we have Anna Padgett. Anna is a passionate advocate for mental health and suicide prevention. She is a SAM Foundation certified trainer in the following: applied suicide intervention skills training, question, persuade, and refer, and mental health first aid and safe talk. Anna is dedicated to helping people with the necessary tools and knowledge to identify and support those struggling with suicidal thoughts. Her interest in suicide prevention stems from her personal experience. She, like so many people, have lost a close friend to suicide. Her devastating loss sparked a deep desire to make a difference and prevent others from experiencing the same kind of pain. Anna has faced her own mental health battles, specifically postpartum depression. Through her personal journey, she has developed an empathetic understanding of the complexities of mental health issues and the importance of open dialogue and support, which we are hoping for today. Her training and personal experience help her in her goal of breaking down the stigma surrounding mental health issues, promoting early prevention and providing hope to those who need it most. And then we have Julie Smith. Julie and I came in together, both of us going like this, moving fast. And this is Julie's display in the back, and after we're finished, we certainly encourage you to go back and take a look at what she's done. Julie is the co-founder and assistant director of the SAM Foundation, which was founded in 2017 by Julie and her sister. They lost their younger brother to suicide in 2002, and they work to prevent the same tragedy in other families. Julie is dedicated to making a positive impact on the lives of individuals struggling with mental health issues and to offer help to those who may feel hopeless. She strives to develop effective strategies and initiatives to prevent suicide, identifying ways individuals, family members, and community leaders can play a role in reducing suicide risk. She works with the Suicide Prevention Specialists of Georgia on several committees and coalitions, continuously fostering new relationships and partnerships within the mental health community and beyond. She speaks at many events during the year, and she's very busy in September, telling her own story of loss and how healing from trauma is an important part of suicide prevention. And finally, we have the man who is partly responsible for our being here today, Ed Kloss. Above and Beyond describes Navy veteran Ed Kloss, a Roswell Rotarian. Ed, do you know everybody? Just about, right? He exemplifies the Rotary model of service above self. A business owner who lives and works in Roswell, he has served on many community boards. As leader of the National Association of Landscape Professionals, he has done much to protect and enhance our physical environment, including keeping Roswell beautiful and important national projects at Arlington Cemetery, the Statue of Liberty, and the Lincoln Memorial. He is also an author. His new book, Second Wind: Stories of Hope, is #1 on Amazon in many different categories, and it is available in any format you might think that you want to read it. His book profiles 50 famous people who attempted suicide, but went on to survive and live good and productive lives. He chose the subject because it reflects his own experiences with depression and attempted suicide. Among his messages to us all is that when you are in need, allow others to help you. And today we begin with Ed, who has graciously agreed to tell us a little bit of his story and also to read an excerpt from his book. Ed, please.
Wow, this is all new to me. I am a rookie at this, and although I'm accustomed to public speaking, this is obviously very personal. The book that been referred to is not a book about me per se, although I do the introduction. It is truly stories of hope, information that I gleaned from the public about some really amazing people. On the back, there's a copy of it that should be passing around. If you'd like to look at it, you'll see some of the names that are on there. So I think that it'd be best if I just go ahead and read the introduction.
Please.
Before I tell you everything you need. All right. Against all odds, I survived a legitimate suicide attempt. My life had spun out of control quickly and unexpectedly. Like a modern-day George Bailey from It's a Wonderful Life, almost everything was seemingly idyllic. I was living the American dream in many ways. I had a wife, 2 unique and talented children, who I loved more than anything, a paid-off house, successful business, great friends, and was widely respected and admired. I was a world traveler, had unique and unforgettable experiences, lived in a utopian suburban community, Roswell, of course, and had plenty of activities that gave me joy. Yet in an instance, my house of cards came crumbling down, and I was woefully unprepared to deal with the challenges that I faced. On a Thanksgiving night, that's this past Thanksgiving, so it's not been that long ago, 8.5 months, right? When I should have been celebrating all of life's successes, I found myself alone, withdrawn, desperate, and hopeless. I was in a dark place where almost nobody knew how terrible things had gotten. I was in a downward spiral, looking into an abyss I could not escape. I was embarrassed, ashamed, depressed, lonely, heartbroken, and going down quickly. It's tough to admit, but I'm just not built for some of the things I was dealing with. I admire those who have thicker skin and a stronger will. It's a cliche, but I cannot find the light at the end of the tunnel, despite my desire to be happy and to be healthy. So I quietly arranged to give away all my earthly possessions, wrote letters to loved ones, at least a couple of them are in this room, and deliberately planned to exit this life. And I would have been successful in my attempt, but for a loving soul who found me before it was too late and got me to a hospital, where I spent the following week. Some things became apparent after leaving the hospital and spending additional time in a mental health facility. First is that those other patients that had been institutionalized with me represented a cross-section of humanity. Young, old, rich, poor, male, female, trans, gay, straight, educated and uneducated, religious and not, veterans and civilians, tall and thin, beautiful and plain, recidivists and first-timers, addicts and teetotalers, every ethnicity and everything and everyone in between. For a few obvious human commonalities in our group, we were all different, had come from many levels of society, yet had arrived at the same place due to suicidal ideation or attempts. In that manner, I was just like them. The second thing that occurred to me was that once discharged from the facility, we would be released back into the world where the same problems, people, and circumstances would be waiting for us. That was a real revelation. In my case, I knew I would have to make some changes, or I would end up back in the same place. That wasn't acceptable. A quote wrongly attributed to Albert Einstein, but powerful nevertheless, is the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. I wanted to live, so I had to take action that differed from how I dealt with my issues in the past. While in the hospital, the same loved one who had found me near death and contacted the first responders shared a printed story from the internet about one of our favorite artists. This person is known and admired all over the world. His concerts are bucket list events for many, and his music ranks among the best ever written and performed. Yet surprisingly, this artist once attempted suicide just like me. How could that be? I began to think about the gift that would have been lost had he been successful in his attempt. His life has touched so many others, and the world is better because of him. Together with the story were the lyrics to one of his songs, "You're Only Human, Second Wind." The artist was none other than the great Billy Joel. I had heard the song many times, but had never paid such close attention to the words. With time on my hands, I began to interpret them differently and to think about my life and the lives of others who had reached rock bottom. I wondered how many other well-known people had lived similar lives of desperation that led them to contemplate or attempt suicide. Once I was discharged and recuperating, I began researching such stories, and many surprised and shocked me. Who knew? I mean, really? I started to think that someday, and somebody should gather, share these stories of survival and triumph. We all know of far too many celebrities and everyday people who have taken their lives. They are tragic, frequently unexpected, and brutally sad. They remain with us in memory long after their deaths. Still, I think we all wish we had ways to prevent them. I began to believe that the stories I was learning about those who had seriously considered or attempted suicide but had been spared could inspire others in similar circumstances as they had me. We don't have to touch the stove to know it is hot. Maybe, just maybe, hearing of and from others who have done it and lived to tell can encourage us to realize that the stove will be just as hot if we try to touch it. Maybe, just maybe, we should learn from others and then try something different. This is important. Suicide is a serious and complex issue that affects many people worldwide. It's a leading cause of death globally, and in this post-pandemic COVID-19 world, it's getting worse daily. Its impact is felt not just by the person who attempts or dies by suicide, but also by their loved ones and communities. Suicide attempts and suicidal ideation are often signs of deep emotional pain and distress, and it's essential to offer support and resources to struggling individuals. I don't claim to be an expert on the subject in any way. I'm not a doctor, counselor, healthcare worker, or scientist. Certainly, you should seek professional help when needed. But I've touched the stove, and I can tell you firsthand that it's damn hot. Please don't try to handle it yourself. There are better ways. There is light at the end of the tunnel, no matter how hopeless and dark things may seem. If you or someone you know is hurting and might need to hear stories of redemption, success, hope, and inspiration, please read or listen to this book and pass it on to someone in need. Don't just leave it on the shelf where it does nothing. Who knows, you might get inspired or inspire someone else to try something different. What more extraordinary gift can there be than to save life? Many resources are available at the end of this book that can be helpful and can point you in the right direction. Utilize them. Don't hesitate to reach out to others for the help you need. Don't isolate. Continue to search for that proverbial light at the end of the tunnel. It's there. At the same time, while it might not seem like it now, things will get better if you don't get into the darkness. You'll be okay. Breathe deeply. Catch your second wind, and please keep going.
And thank you. For the entire panel, but Ed, I'd like to start with you. The traumatic experience that you had when you were living inside this, as family members, friends, supporters, what do we do to see those signs sooner? How do we identify what's happening with someone who may be in distress, but we might not see it? So please, I'd like to start with you, and then I would like to get the rest of the panel comment.
Well, others might have their own opinions about my particular case, but for me, it was isolation. I was a person that was highly involved in my community, in lots of communities, lots of leadership roles, lots of activities. I taught Sunday school, I coached teams. When things started, I was always good about giving advice to friends. I was always a good friend to others, and I was there for my friends when they needed me. But when I needed help, when I was searching for things, I withdrew. And the mere fact that I was withdrawing from the activities, I would make excuses. Oh, I can't go to those Rotary meetings. It's COVID, I'm staying away there. Oh, you know what, I'm too busy. I'm gonna roll off that committee. I began to do a lot of that, and then I was falling into that abyss, and I was going down by myself, and nobody was really seeing it. They were thinking, oh, Ed, I haven't seen Ed in a while. He must really be busy.
But nobody called up and said, hey, what's up? Julie, would you pick it up from there?
That's kind of isolating from your community is, of course, is a really big warning sign. I get very emotional too, by the way, so sorry.
We have Kleenex.
If my voice cracks, still to this day, because it's such a hard topic. But withdrawing from your community, any kind of behavior that is unusual. And so, yes, I would say isolation and withdrawing is a very big warning sign for your loved ones to pay attention to. When in our trainings, we actually go through a long list of signs and risk factors that we could perhaps notice when someone is struggling. I like to look at the holistic view, because if it's someone that doesn't know that as well, or someone who is doing that, they might not know what else to look out for. So you want to look at their, holistic view of their life and see if there's something else in their life that has happened. Like say if a community member at this church had noticed that he was withdrawing, would probably also notice that, were you going through a divorce?
Yes.
So right there, he's going through a really big life change, and going through a divorce is a huge risk factor. So looking at his life and seeing what else is going on there would help you understand that, oh, I need to watch out for him, something's just not quite right.
But do we not worry about interfering and overstepping?
I hope not in this case. I hope that if your gut tells you that this person is in distress, and even if it was that he wasn't thinking about suicide, but that we would still step up to ask why haven't you been here? And when I'm doing my trainings, I tell people, follow your gut, follow that spidey sense that says something's not right. Because if it's someone that you know and love, you know when things are different. But it could also be a person at the airport who's sitting there crying, and you sit down next to them and they tell you their story. So follow your instinct, because you're here for a reason right now, sitting in this room, because you probably have empathy or have some sort of touching with this. So you probably already have all the instincts you need to know when something's not quite right.
So Jenny, let's add the aspect of family denial to this. What if somebody gets in trouble? They're behaving differently in their family, but family members who say, oh, no, it's okay, it's just going through a bad patch, it's okay. What do you think about that?
What do you do about that? Well, the first step that ours always taught me is you could not make someone suicidal by bringing it up.
Important.
So the family doesn't want to bring it up because they think it is going to give them an idea. That's what the fear is. They're not, they think they're protecting the loved one. And the denial is protecting themselves as well. And if we just say, no, he's just, divorce hard, then we get away from that uncomfortable feeling, So that's all it is, no different than, I think you need a new car, come on, the wheels fall off, It's no different than that, we take care of ourselves, we have to.
And Lou, you have spent a lot of time with tough guys, which adds another layer, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, one of the things for tough guys is they don't show these signs. And so I've had people say, well, those are the ones that are gonna die. And I'm like, no, that's not true. Then how can you stop them? And one thing that I've always said is the reality is 1 out of 5 people never show the signs.
Really?
1 out of 5, so 20%. And so they say, well, those are the things that are gonna die. No, you have to be aware of the circumstances. So that kind of goes back to what Julie was saying. I just got back from South Georgia yesterday, and they had a tornado or a hurricane came through. Imagine for a moment that the stop signs were knocked down before I stopped. Does that mean I don't have to stop? Not if I'm aware of the circumstances. I'm going to stop. I don't need signs to tell me that there's a risk there. If I don't stop, somebody might get hurt. And so we have to be aware of risk, and that's what community is about. That's what you guys are community. We're community here. And so it's not about denial, that's not my lane. I care about you, so I'm gonna get involved. That's what community is built on, a network.
Exactly. Question, can you hear all right? Please lift your hand if you're not, because this is so important. We don't want anybody listening. All right, what do you do if it's someone in your family who has had problems that have been acknowledged, and perhaps they're on medication, and things seem to be going along fine, but you're worried, and they're saying to you, oh, I'm good, no, I'm good. Because we all know that sometimes that is not the case. How do you intervene? And I would think this would happen with men. You see it, but do they?
Absolutely. I think that my son saw it in me. I didn't even realize I was putting out any signs, but he had the courage to ask. And that's the subtitle of my books, Listen, Learn, Believe, Courage to Ask, Power to Save. Because if we're willing to ask the question, a life will be saved. And it goes back to what Ed was alluding to. Suicide is not the result of wanting to die, it's the result of loss that leads to hopelessness. And so when someone's willing to engage that person and courageously ask them, that's where the installation of hope begins. And whether you're a tough guy or whatever, we all need hope to survive. There's a really good book that says, without hope, people perish.
And you have done a lot of work on hope.
Yes, a lot of work on hope, as you see over our signs in the back, but to the point of what Lou was talking about, the suicide is the end result of losing hope. A suicidal person doesn't actually want to die. They just want that pain to go away. And so I'd love to know, and I'd love for Lou to ask this next, but there's a Kevin Hines. He is a big force in the suicide prevention community as well. He's an attempt survivor, and he jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge. And so he's one of a very few people who did survive. And so he made it his mission to be in the suicide prevention community as well. And he went and interviewed every one of those survivors and asked them this question, and did you want to die ultimately? Did you really want to die by suicide? And every single one of them said no. So I say this in every one of my speaking engagements, in every one of my trainings, because that to me is proof that suicidal people did not want to die. And I would love to know, because I've actually never asked Lily myself, how did you feel when your son asked you that question?
It was 1,000 pounds of boulders coming off my back, and I could finally breathe again. Yeah.
And that is what I want everyone to know, even though Ed has a very different story, and he was asked that question, and I would like to dive into that too, but generally speaking, we hear and we know that asking a person who is suicidal is not going to implant that idea into their head. It is not going to make this a more serious situation. In reality, it can hopefully reduce the anxiety and pressure, just like he said. It lifted 1,000 pounds off his back. That's what we know in this community, is that in reality, asking that question is amazing, is fabulous, is so necessary, it is vital.
Okay, so once the question is asked, we now know, or someone has said to you, I am in trouble, and I would go to you for this, services. When you were in crisis, how did it unfold in terms of professionals who were there to help you understood what you needed? And then I would like for the rest of you to comment from your areas of expertise on where you think we are in our communities in terms of beds that are available, social workers who are on available to you. So then let's start with you and talk a little bit about services.
Services after the fact.
Yes, when somebody had to do something about you, how did that unfold?
My situation is so out there. And I'm not comfortable talking about a lot of the details. I haven't shared much of that, but I will tell you this, I did something that was highly unusual. Knowing that Thanksgiving was on a Thursday, and FedEx and UPS would be delivered on that day, and that somebody received a letter, they wouldn't receive it until Friday. I wrote a letter to the Alpharetta Fire Department and said, find me here are my instructions, everything's laid out on the table, don't break down the doors are locked. And the first responders that got there, without going into the details. When I became aware that I got passed over, they were wonderful. The first responders that were there were absolutely empathetic, from what I recall, was out there. They were very, very nice. But I will say this, once I arrived at the facility that I went to, they were woefully unprepared for services that I needed, and that others and what was even more shocking was that it was in a community like this. I can only imagine what it's like in areas that are underserved, but we are far from where we need to be as far as adult services.
And thank you for saying that, and I'd like you to pick it up from there. What are your experiences in this regard?
I agree that we are overly unprepared to help those who have mental health crisis. I did go, Julie and I are both involved on the strategic planning for suicide, and I went to Cobb County's. Their chairwoman had a meeting for everyone, and I got some resources there, but they have like one unit that can hold 34 people. And they're full a lot, and personally, I've taken someone to Northside Hospital, which was great. They did everything correctly, they took him in, didn't have insurance, and they did everything correctly. And then they found him somewhere to go afterwards, which was really, really special. But that's just not the case. We have way more people who need the help than we have counselors. We have counselors that don't have the information that they need to help the person with suicidal crisis. We're missing part of education of counselors. We're missing a part that teaches them how to deal with patients who might have suicidal ideation. So I think there's a lot of work that I think Georgia's trying really hard to do. I think Georgia's way ahead, but we both grew up in Alabama. And the rural parts of Alabama, I've trained police officers. And they're like, we are it. This is where it ends. There's nowhere else for me to take these people. There's no other resource, so.
To be able to provide some hope around it, because I do like to argue with that, well, but it is dire. I also want to be realistic. It is dire though, but and my hope is very small because because it is realistic. But I try to see everyone as an individual case and hope that we can get connected with, someone who can be a plan and treatment plan, professional in that field that can help plan your treatment that might be unconventional. I feel like I'm trying to coach people nowadays on having more of a outpatient, plan if they're safe enough, and work with someone in order to find all the different resources they can do outpatient wise, because we don't have enough inpatient, like we said, beds and facilities. So it's more about getting a really good safe treatment plan that can be outpatient. And the hope comes from just knowledge too, the fact that what we do, we get out here and we're training everyone and bringing all this awareness, and just Lou's case, how the warning signs, the risk factors, if you are equipped with this knowledge, then maybe you have a little bit more hope in knowing that you will intervene when it's time. And Jenny, do your experiences parallel with what others have been saying?
I actually have some great stories. We
Good.
have two lovely women in our Survivors of Suicide Loss group who share their stories about their own suicide ideation. One lost her husband and one lost her boyfriend. And the lady who lost her husband, she had 2 kids, they had just gone off to college, she was isolating. She drove herself to Emory ER, and some social worker sat with her for hours until she felt she was safe. I think it was 8 hours she spent just in an office on Sunday afternoon. She was terrified of going to Beachburg or anything like that. And the woman just made the assessment that I'm just gonna sit with her until she's, in a litigious position where I can say she's not suicidal anymore, because that's part of the problem, right?
Yes.
That's the biggest part of it.
And wait, there's a little bit more about that, just in case people aren't aware of the litigious part of helping people.
The whole, what is it? It's going to the schools randomly now. If you tell a counselor that you're anywhere near suicidal, if they don't act, and call the police immediately, they're gonna get sued if the child, it's. It makes it could be worse, right?
And Lou, and I'm thinking of young men in particular, but we know, of course, that it also affects women. But once they're 18 issues, if you're a parent and you have a child who's in trouble, what do we need to be thinking of? What do communities need to be aware of and thinking about to make this situation easier for families, for individuals?
I think as parents, we need to be aware that our kids are not immune. I had a 17-year-old male a few years ago in our hometown down in Peachtree City that took his life. A few days later, or after the funeral, some of the parents wanted me to get together and do a critical incident debrief with them and their 6 best friends. And there was one boy that was not there. And the host, I asked, where is he at? And the hostess said, well, I talked to the mom last night, and she said, oh, we don't need to come to something like that because our child would never be suicidal. His best friend just killed himself. He's probably having thoughts of suicide, and if he's not, he might. And so you cannot assume that you come from a successful family or a family from Roswell or a religious family. There is no natural immunity, regardless of ethnic or anything, religious. We're all susceptible, and to act like we aren't is foolishness.
Which gets back to a kind of denial, and you're telling that story. it makes me want to ask the whole panel, and we read so much about this, we talked so much about it. We know that suicide rates are up significantly. I think they're about 16% from 2011 to 2022. What role do you think, and I know there are many causes, but let's talk about young people and social media and other influences. Let me stay with you. Go ahead.
This right here is deadly for young people. We give our kids training when they get behind the wheel at 15 to drive a car. We give them no training on how to use this. We take more time teaching them how to drive a car. And we don't spend any time on this. Here's son, you're 10 years old, you get this. And there's no restrictions. Parents should remain in control of their kids' communication. You're communicating. And that's one of the problems. We give them an open license to do whatever they want to do, and there's no restrictions whatsoever. And this is killing people, literally killing people. You had a few years ago, I don't know if it's still out there, the Blue Whale app that was encouraging children to kill themselves.
Yes.
Encouraging children to kill themselves. And then, I didn't get invited to that party, everybody else did, and they go and kill themselves.
And do you think we overlook, and Jenny, I'll bring this one to you, and then I'd be interested in others, that we do know that there's a unique problem with the poor children because of brain development. But let's talk about the fragility that exists in us as adults who also don't get invited to parties they see on Facebook.
What's your question?
My question.
Yeah. I don't know, lead by example. You lead by example. And if your child sees you off the phone, if your child sees you reaching out to friends when I need a girls' night, if your child friends see you mention your therapist, or your HRT because you have those mental puzzle. Yeah, like all these things that we take care of ourselves. We don't have to be this big warrior. In my opinion, you put the oxygen mask on yourself first when the flight goes down.
Very good point.
And that's how I try to parent, but I have 2 teens and they have phones and I'm guilty.
Yeah.
I'll say, I'll try to spin it positively, and what phones and the internet has provided for some youth is the place they would have never found to fit in. And so, the balancing of the negative and the positive, it's both. And it somehow has found this place for maybe this group of people who don't fit in at school somewhere to fit in and to find other people who think like them. So I don't think it can be all negative. I agree with Lou and Jenny. I think that I do think it's what we do, and how we teach them to use it.
And from what I know, we know more now. We have studies now that we can reflect on. So when I have 2 older girls and we didn't have that. And so it was kind of the Wild Wild West with these iPhones and social media and all of that. I'm grateful, I feel like they survived it. So, I mean, I don't know how much damage it's done yet, but they're okay. However, I have a 10-year-old and that she's daughter, and I know I will be doing things differently because now I have information to back it up. So and specifically for teenage girls, so it has been, now research shows that Instagram is not good for teenage girls, bottom line. It's not going anywhere, so we have to do what Anna was saying, is find the positives, find out ways we can use this, because we're using it for business, and use it for awareness, we use it in positive ways. And so now we have to really kind of continue to strive for positive and strive for protection. It is, right now, 2022 is the highest suicide rate since World War II. So I believe that social media is a part of that, the media is a part of that, politics is a part of that. And we have a big problem on our hands, and we just still have a lot of work to do, and that's why we're all sitting here. And that's why we all have organizations and books and why we need y'all here and to help us do the work that we're doing. Because because the work is you. You know, our work is engaging the community and making sure you can make what we do possible, not only financially, but by having us come in to your organizations and train you and teach you what we're just talking about today. Because there's some real stuff that we can do within our communities that can change this.
Like CPR. Like CPR, how many people in here know CPR? I would say we've probably been through class.
And if you haven't, you're not currently certified, you probably will one time.
Probably not.
Right?
It was the same thing you need for suicide awareness. I mean, if we have someone out there having a suicidal crisis and we all know how to handle it, how to ask, are you having thoughts of suicide? I've noticed these things going on in your life. Have you been thinking about suicide? And asking it directly and knowing how to do that, how to do it too. Yeah.
And there's a protocol to follow.
Yes, and then you know how to do it, just like you would when you do CPR for someone who is like on the ground.
This is my last question to you before we open it up for our audience. And then, as we said, the lovely Ms. Bolton is going to have the last word today. We want to leave time for that. And you partly answered the question, both Julia and Alan, but we'll frame it this way. Given all of your experience, and the four of you have literally eons of experience in this field, dealing with people, things that we don't, we're the observers, the listeners, the learners here today. If you could ask for one thing that you think would make a difference, whether it's on the federal level, whether it's from the community, whether it's, I don't know, more drugs, which never seems like a good idea to me. But starting with you, Ed, what one thing, given what you know, do you think would help make a difference?
Well, I might take an extra minute here.
Please.
If I could. My mind is reeling because I'm taking all of this in.
That's
There are a couple of things that I would like to address. Anybody that knows me as basically an upbeat, positive, happy person. This kind of thrown me for a loop. And spoke about opportunities for good with the technology. And while I see that is true, and I definitely use technology for very positive things, there are opportunities for incredible people as well, in ways that we can never even fathom until you hear something. For example, how many people have heard of the term sexploitation? Sexploitation.
Yeah.
Sexploitation.
Yes, exploitation.
Okay. There are examples where anyone that was at Rotary last week heard a speaker, a state rep from South Carolina, who spoke about a 17-year-old, otherwise well-adjusted son who committed suicide because he received a text from somebody that seemed like it was an attractive young woman that was flirting with him. She showed him some pictures. He showed him some pictures of himself. And then that person said, hey, we're going to show your family, we're going to show your church, we're going to tell your school, your classmates, your teachers. He had the opportunity, there was a gun in the house, and he put it in his head, against his head, and pulled the trigger. He had been playing video games with his friends an hour earlier. There are people that are just intrinsically evil who will take advantage of people, and they use technology as an example. And then the other thing that I wanted to say was, when COVID started, I was offered a position as a PTSA president at Roswell High School. And before I agreed to take it, I was very concerned about one thing, and that was this issue of suicide. There were two beautiful young ladies at Roswell High School, two cheerleaders, who committed suicide just before and I feared that. I feared that was going to happen on my watch, so to speak. I wasn't the principal, I wasn't a teacher, but in that position as the PTSA president, I would have had some buy-in there, and that concerned me. Going back to the idea of opportunities and that it can happen to anyone. If you had asked me at that time, would you ever consider attempting suicide? I would have said, I'm the last person in the world who would do that. And I was worried about others, but then look. So it can't happen to anybody at any time. So.
Trauma comes to you. You can't stop it, generally speaking, in one way or another. it might be, not getting the teacher you want, or it could be something extremely boring.
What would make your work easier?
So
Now,
So I have a huge ask, and this is my dream, and I will put it out there, even though it's completely unrealistic, so I'm gonna have two asks, okay? So that's, my first ask is that I want a St. Jude's for mental health. And this is a psychiatric research hospital that anyone in the country can come to, at no cost, where we are constantly studying this, we're constantly figuring out the mental illnesses and getting our book, our D book, which is where they hold them all. We're over like 500 now, and we really need to focus on those and find really good medicine for them, and really be able to do some research, but also have a place where anybody can go for treatment at no cost. So we're not talking about treatment anymore. We know that this is the place to go, just like if your child has cancer, they know where they need to go. So that is my biggest dream. Truly, probably, hopefully I'll see it before I die, I don't know, because this is $1 billion and lots of organizations and committees that are gonna sit down at the table. So I put it out there, Iris, we've got time. I know.
yeah, exactly. Is this, for one, that's again, exist for another.
Exactly. And I've been saying this since we started, and I'll never not say it, so, and Dr. Hoffman is the one who came up with
You
QPR.
have a second ask?
Oh, sorry. I could talk about this today.
I know,
That's fine. Second ask is what I've already said, which is go, engage with us, and tell your organizations about us. We're out there, we are in your community, but we have to do more. This year, I want to train nurses. They're my biggest goal, but if you have any connections with hospitals or whatnot, which we do, we're gonna do that. That's my big strategic initiative for the year, but engage with us, I'll speak with anywhere, anytime, just get to know the SAM Foundation, who we are, go to our website, and just support us in any way that you can.
Great.
I'll do that.
Okay, dinner.
But I'll also say, oh, we have a concert on Friday night. I think my other, I love doing these trainings. I love doing the trainings that I do. I love speaking to people about it. I love to hear your story about what you've been through. And I think share your story, hear other people's stories. Like, I would love for everyone, like the QPR, CPR thing, like I would love for everyone to know how to talk to someone about suicide and then practice saying it in the mirror. Just to those who are here, practice saying, are you thinking about suicide? Because when it's someone that you love, it's hard because you don't want them to say yes. You don't want someone you love to be in that much pain. And so if you don't think about it first, they might say no because you say, are you thinking about suicide? Yeah,
because
that's
why we need to train.
But this is like one of the most important points the 4 or 5 of you have made, and that is saying it is not going to put it in their mind. So you've got to have the courage to say it. Right, Jen, I want to open it up for you on.
My first thought is always gun control because my mom died by suicide. She was found and struggled and got that away from her, and dang if there wasn't a second one. And so I always say gun control, but after my many days of going to the state legislature in Georgia, I'm giving up. It ain't gonna happen. So Iris used to say, we need coping skills curriculum in every elementary.
Yes. And in corporations.
Oh my gosh, I know. Absolutely. Just basic coping skills. And Iris was brilliant in the 80s. Instead of having a suicide prevention action sheet we would take to school, we would have primary coping skills. And it was just hidden in that, right? And things like that. And like I recently spent a fortune at physical therapy that insurance made you do before you do surgery, that kind of thing. Physical therapy is like the first line of defense. And then I discovered on my own that yoga was better. I'm like, why aren't we teaching yoga? Why aren't we doing free yoga classes in our lunch break rooms why aren't we paying these lovely yoga instructors the $40 copay instead of the physical therapist who just yank the heck out of you? You know, I mean, there's room for both,
So
but
would you add music therapy to that? Body movement.
you have 2 music majors right here.
Yes, so music would be another part. Lou, let's get control of this.
Jimmy's off the rails.
I concur with everything that's been said. I think if my dream, if I woke up tomorrow and said, what was your dream? Is that, we understand the power of peer-to-peer support. Because there's never gonna be enough clinicians. There's never gonna be enough hospitals. But if we as peers know, and I'm not talking about just adults, the 17-year-old boy that took his life, he had told one of the boys, the boy worked all weekend to try to save his friend, but he didn't have an understanding of what true loyalty means. A teenager, a teenager thinks that loyalty means, Jenny, here's what, if you don't see me Monday, you know why. And Jenny spends the whole weekend trying to save my life, never knows that she's gotta go to school. If you have teenagers in your house, this would be my biggest ask tonight, is go home and have a loving conversation with your teenagers tonight. And ask them, have you ever had friends that have thought about suicide? They can say, yeah, Mom, yeah, I have. What do you do for them? Well, if they tell me not to tell anybody, then I will honor that. Teach them that loyalty does not mean I keep secrets. Loyalty means I keep you safe. And that would be my biggest encouragement tonight. Loyalty means I keep you safe. And so if you see something, teach your kids tonight. If you see something, say something. Don't keep it to yourself. Come to me.
And
So I feel like I didn't answer your question.
you didn't, so let it go. Because I always have a clock in my head as casual as I may Please.
I have a number of things that I could suggest that the ideas that suggest the legislature, for example. But the thing that I think that needs to change is more nebulous. It's not it's not a bill. It's there's been a hardening of people's hearts, and there's a stigma about mental health issues that people are still just afraid to talk about it, to address.
Yes.
And I think that if I can make marijuana
Thank you for
open
saying
people's
that.
minds to that and let them know there are so many issues around that. There are different demographics and socioeconomic differences, just like in so many things. You can buy justice if you have enough money. You can buy proper mental health if you have the right money, but if you don't, you're in the bind. So I think that there's some issues that we have to work as human beings.
Absolutely. Well, before we open it to questions, you have been my favorite panel in about 3 decades. Oh, let me say that. I was taking All right, we have a few minutes for your questions. Is this your hand up or are you stretching?
It is, yeah, it's 10 minutes. So Judy, I wonder if you've heard about, there are a couple of states who are looking into, you can put yourself on a list that says, do not sell me a gun. If you're feeling like that would be a safe thing for you to do, that would keep you safe. I heard an interview about it, and it's an interesting concept.
They'll get it somewhere else.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's just way.
it's not gonna happen here.
Yeah.
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 Questions?
Right here. I'd love to know more about the programs that Sam Foundation does, like the range. You mentioned different types of organizations you guys work with. Can you tell us a little bit more about the different, would my company be a good organization?
Yes, so we have so many different trainings, and actually Lou has one as well that I like to, want to get out there as well. But he created his own, and then we also have 4 different training programs, but we're really probably more than that, because we're constantly searching for evidence-based training programs. But we have them at every level from community. QPR is the one that we were talking about, that sounds like CPR. That's the one that everyone on the planet needs to have. yes, middle school and up. We have another training called Assist, which is a 2-day training. That's a little bit, that's more, it's a very healing program though within itself. If you ever have the opportunity to take it, I would take it. It takes a little bit of commitment, but it's fantastic. But I would recommend that more for also just first responders, nurses, clinicians. And then there's the Safe Talk that we just adopted this past year or summer that Anna is now trained in as well. And that's another, it's just a higher level QPR truly, and it's really concentrating on keeping everyone safe. And then mental health first aid, and that's an all-day training that we can that we do for any organization as well. That gives you a great overview of mental health. Yeah.
Mostly, I mean, it talks about a lot of different health issues, but depression and anxiety more. It talks about how to handle someone who's in psychosis or is unable to respond to you, how to put someone if they've overdosed into a position. So it stretches, as suicide is part of it, but it has
So these are programs for schools that are designed.
All kinds of work, I mean, literally, like I said, the QPR you can do any person on the planet, so any organization. And then the others, it would be a more of a situation where you come to me and then I would decide which one would be best for you, kind of thing. And then
Morris said corporations.
yes, and then but another big 2 programs that are trained, so we also like mental health professionals. And this is extremely important to it. Now, granted, I say that all the time. Obviously, every single thing we do is extremely important. So, but 50% of mental health professionals aren't comfortable seeing a suicidal individual. That's a really big problem. That's a really big problem. So, especially if you want to get people out of the hospital.
Which gets back to stigma.
Yep, but it's because they're not getting the training that they need in school. They're really not.
Right.
So, we have, there's 2 different trainings that we've adopted: ANSWER, as you mentioned, suicide risk in patients, and then CAMSCARE. CAMSCARE is a newer model that I actually would like a little bit better. We're about to train a bunch of graduate students out of Athens State in Alabama, and it's just more in depth. There's a lot of follow-up with that. There's a lot. It's a really good additional training for mental health professionals. So those are the different trainings. We're always adapting new, so adopting new. So important to go to our website, so you will always be on this.
I have a question, I'm getting to yours, and I think it's maybe even for Susan or for Kelly, for anyone here, because we no longer print programs so that you can get in touch with people. Kelly, can you tell the audience how, for any other follow-up, if there are questions you have that aren't answered here, you can reach the panel? How would that work?
Yeah, actually, you can go to the Friends of Mimosa Hall and Gardens website, and those emails will go to our communications director, and she will be happy to make those matches.
And we also have Anna and my card, we're also
In the back.
table.
Yeah.
And the Link Center stuff's back there as well as a couple of books from the Link Center. And also.
Great. All right, there was a hand up back there. Tammy.
I teach elementary school, and tomorrow we have our first training with Sources of Strength.
Yes.
Are you aware of that?
I am, yes.
I'm looking forward to it, because it's amazing how many elementary kids come up with they say, I'm gonna kill myself.
It's very alarming, and
It's not reported under 10, so we don't have good statistics because they won't report suicides under 10 years old. But it's happening.
But on a positive note, another reason why you need our training. We trained several school counselors a few years ago, and this was just, well, we did Roswell High School, yes, but this was a real feedback that I got. This was just QPR, and that first week after we trained these counselors, they came back with, was it 5 or 6 interventions from the training that we gave them, and then the 6 month, at the 6 month mark, it came to 18, got up to like 18 interventions. So
The teachers were doing it.
So yes, the teachers, the people that were trained, yes, who were the ones that intervened in noticing, taking note of their training and work, basically, is that they were able to recognize the danger in these students, and they were able to ask the question and intervene, and then get them the help that they need, because that right there, that's the whole, that's what we do.
Okay, we have a question right here, and then I saw a hand in the back.
For what? I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Sir, please do wait. I'm sorry, I did not
He's my.
see you. Okay. I know.
Okay, I had a question for Ed.
Yes.
So I'm like 15 and I've been in and out of mental hospitals, and I was wondering, and I've gotten better, but like lately it's been getting worse. And I was wondering, how do you deal with it if it gets worse again? Like, cause I've been through the mental hospitals, the medicine, the coping plans, and all the sheets of safety wise, and I don't feel like I can just do it again. Like, it's just a whole process, and how do you go through that?
That's a difficult question for me because, and I'm not certain that I'm prepared to give you an answer, because in my case, I haven't gone there again. I faced a set of circumstances that seemed daunting and I saw no hope. But once I survived it and I had help and I had loving people around me, and I started seeing that I wasn't the first person or the last person. I was going to be going through some of the things that I did. I just sort of thought I was at the time. I haven't come that close to the edge yet. Although I think it's probably like an alcoholic. If you, I'm not certain, but once you have gone there, those thoughts might linger in your mind more than they might in somebody else's mind that might be a little bit healthier mentally. My suggestion would be just sort of what I was saying before: don't isolate. Let your friends and family know, hey, if you see me pulling away, that's not what I want to do, and that's not what I want to do. Keep an eye out for me. Reach out to your friends and ask your family. Let people know. It's like the old saying, see something, say something. You know when you're facing those crisis moments, and when you feel like it, don't keep it to yourself, please. So I got a question for you, and I don't want to put you on the spot. When I saw you earlier, I feel like I know you. Do we know each other? No? Do you go to Ross School? No? Just look familiar.
Love to chat with you after.
Okay, so would you like for anybody else to ask a question or maybe talk to you afterwards?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would love it if you would ask the same question to the others on the panel.
Sure, I mean, to what you said too, I had situational trauma, situational issues, and also because I've lost my brother to suicide, I'm at a greater risk. And I can, if I have if a bad situation is going on in my life, I can go into that depression. So people do know to look out for me for that reason. But I have not had in a really long time, but I know a lot of other people that do have to manage their illness. My mother's bipolar, and maybe you can speak to how you manage your cycles.
Yes, what's your name?
So,
Sam.
Oh,
Sam.
The name of your organization?
So I know.
Thank you for sharing with us.
Yes.
And I would love to spend more time talking to you.
So then the agenda after. All right, we have time for 2 more questions, and then we are going to hear from Ms. Bolt.
And Roger.
Okay, let me do this, John.
I forgot. So, no, I was only joking. Sarcastic. And my question's more of, it seems like there's an obvious place for you guys to reach the most people in schools, the workplace, that sort of thing. What sort of hurdles and obstacles do you meet in, say, going to the school district? Because right now, I can't put about Hank Aaron in Florida schools. So what do you guys think?
And let's bring it down to this end. I would love, everybody gets the question. Yes, Lou?
The school's got it figured out. That's the obvious implication. It's interesting, I was in Alabama.
But what would be the legislation?
I mean,
Legislators in
local school
and local
boards,
schools,
school boards.
okay.
we have to go through every school board.
I
Right.
had give you an example. We had a 17-year-old girl killed herself 2 days before graduation.
Mhm.
I happened to be out of state that day when I got the call from parents who know and wanted me to go to schools, tell them, you know, we need to be working on. 2 days later, they had graduation, her chair is sitting there because they forgot to take it out of the location, so there's a blank spot. Her name is it's in the graduation. When they're going through the list, nobody meant, there was, they skipped her name. If she had died in a car wreck or cancer or anything else, they would have, it's not that you gotta say so-and-so died of suicide last night. But we could have taken a moment to pause and honor the memory of Susie Q, who lost her life 2 nights ago. But there was no recognition that she even existed. And that is disturbing to me. That's what if that's the policy of the school, then we just raise the stigma.
You just also increase the risk of a lot more students dying by suicide. Because it's, you know, there's something called post-vention that we're also treating. And that's not what you do. You have to acknowledge what has happened and then put in summaries and swiftly, so, but to answer the question, and Ginny and others as well, but it's hard to get our trainings out there, honestly. And I think it's because of the stigma, because of, you know, people are scared to death of it. But also because you can't see it. You can't, like, you're not, it's not a disability that you can see. And so, and to me, I feel like that's a great barrier. And people are like, oh, it's great to do that. I love that you do that. And then they forget about it and go on. And then they don't engage and I'm like, but you need this, I need training.
Yeah, I went to Dunwoody High School where we were, I think for a while known as the, you know, suicide high school. It was a weekly or bi-weekly or not monthly occurrence at my school.
But you know,
And never once was there anyone that came to talk. You'll hear about group counseling sometimes, but not even back then, nothing.
But in moving us on, because there are a couple more questions before we go on, but one of the things that has always been an issue, and that is local school board control, that to get any program that is not state certified into any school means going before a school committee, which has gotten to be a much more complicated and dicey issue than it once was, because people are so hyper sensitive, so it's really, it just kind of a Gordian knot. Please, are you still with me? Would you ask your question? Thank you.
I was going to direct my question to you, Ben. I'm also a survivor of a suicide attempt. And
Glad you're here.
yes,
So glad you're here.
I want to ask you, you said that you haven't gone back to that dark place. My attempt was also quite recent, just towards the beginning of the year. And I want to ask you 2 things. The first one is, did you find that some of the people, like some of your friends, didn't know what to say to you afterwards, so they had backed away because they were uncomfortable to say things that didn't say anything at all?
Yes, those feelings are powerful and it's something that I've had to deal with. Yes, you absolutely have people who you think, gosh, maybe I've always been there for them and now I need help and I'm acknowledging it, or they're aware and they stay away. I think it was Hobbes that said, we live lives of quiet desperation. Many people do, and people are just afraid. There's that stigma that it's like, think about Ryan White in the AIDS in the 80s. People they wouldn't give him a hug, they didn't want him at the school because they were so stigmatized. And yeah, I've had to learn to forgive people and accept that they probably mean well, and they just don't know how to handle it. So I try not to blame because I think that sort of a wasted emotion, but I also can tell you that it's hurtful and it's painful to think. And I say this to a lot of people, sometimes people in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. Maybe they were there for you at a certain time, and they're not there now for you now. It's okay, there's a reason for everything.
Okay, and then the one other thing I wanted to ask you is, did you have like any individual counseling or therapy afterwards?
Yes, I have, and I've had to skip around a little bit because it's not like one size fits all.
Yeah.
First counselor, great guy, you talk about sailing and he was kind of socioeconomic level. We never got down to it. He'd say, okay, need a credit card. And you know, it just really, he might have been great for some other people, but he didn't address the other issues. And then I went to go see another person who was sort of a guru for the rich and famous in Atlanta, was recommended to me by somebody that is a well-known and very wealthy individual in Atlanta. Yale, educated, brilliant, we had great conversations, but he was outrageously expensive and he was far away. I finally found somebody, a psychologist that's local, he's younger. He helps me with a lot, cognitive behavioral therapy. But there may be some areas where I've been told I need help in other areas, maybe dealing with some things from my childhood. I mean, he's not necessarily the perfect fit for that, so I take what I get and I keep on looking at what's the what we're saying about.
Yeah.
There's not one place where everything is hard, you have to really do the work.
Knowing how to navigate that for anybody is difficult, and it's especially difficult even for people who are well educated and have connections. It just gets to the heart of why this is so complex. Our last question is in the back of the room, and I saw you the whole time. Please.
So I am an educational, I teach kids anywhere from babies through 8th grade in different capacities. And I'm having a hard time with a couple different things. If you ask that question, it doesn't put it into their head, because I'm dealing with, small children that have never maybe heard this at all. And the last thing I want to do is do anything on that level. But then at the same time, I love the coping skills and want to learn a lot more about that for when I'm dealing with older kids or even middle kids, of like, how do you help them deal with these little things so when the big things come, they have those skills already figured out. What ages do you introduce all these different things that you're talking about? Because clearly you're not going to talk to a 4-year-old about, are you feeling like you want to kill yourself? Because hopefully there are not any out there, Lord willing. What age do you guys recommend doing these different steps at?
It's the things, right? And trust your instinct. If you know that they lost a parent recently by suicide, then obviously you can talk about it. I have this funny story I tell on my daughter. I have been reading Thomas Joyner's book about his father's suicide and how important he thinks they can tell young kids that it was suicide even if they're 4. So I was literally reading it when my like, I don't know, 4 or 5-year-old precocious daughter was teaching her to tie her shoes, and she goes, Mom, did Grandma Judy teach you to tie her shoes? Grandma Judy was my stepmother, and she didn't know that, and she didn't know that my mother she would never get to meet. And here I just read The Professional, the professor at Florida State that said, you never lie. So, I didn't say the word suicide, but I said, yeah. And when she was in high school, she goes, hey, Mom, did you know that for 10 years I thought your mother had Down syndrome? I was like, what? And she goes, you told me that your mom died of mental illness. And I thought the only mental illness I'd ever seen was Down syndrome. And she goes, so for 10 years I thought, oh, Mom, that must have been so hard. I mean, her mother had Down syndrome. So, duh, so you trust your instinct, you do your best.
But there aren't any clear guidelines, is that what I'm sensing here about what you would say to a child that young?
Julia, how young are you talking about specifically, or are you just talking about ages in general? Because I would.
According to 8th grade, she said.
I deal with anywhere from babies all the way to 8th grade in different schools.
So it is a case specific, of guidelines, I think, are more around 10 where I wanna start using the words suicide. But like she said, if they're really, you know, I still want it to be based on the child, because they could be, their EQ, their emotional IQ could be pretty advanced, and so they might need more information. I wouldn't tell a 4-year-old that, but I would continue to check in with them, and you can, talk about coping emotions and, you know, mental health, and then you can ask the question in ways that aren't direct as well. Like say, you could say, do you ever feel like going to sleep and never waking up? That to me is a great way of introducing that topic to someone who's younger, that just a little too young to have those hard topics. But it is affecting people earlier. We don't necessarily have hard guidelines right just the second because of that, because it is fluid, this space. And so it's more, you know, I consult with professionals when these things come up, you know, like that's what I suggest. This is a group effort, it takes the village. And so we just reach out to other counselors or therapists or psychologists that you know, and then, or call us and we can connect you to others, because you know, Link Center, you know, they're a great resource for this. Stuart, he's there on staff, and he can help answer a lot of these questions as well.
Because I think that's important information to help people know how to deal with. And I'm a little bit surprised that the American Association for Suicidology doesn't have some guidelines, something.
I think it's hard. I mean, middle schools where they say.
Where we can start being more direct, but
Talking about it, but
it's affecting you.
one of the dreams that I dreamed of was a counselor, and he's a suicidologist, and he's had 2 children that were around 5 years old who have attempted suicide. And one of them had attempted suicide and his grandfather died, and they're like, oh, he went to a better place.
Oh.
And he went, and they're like, he just wanted to be with his grandfather. He wasn't thinking about killing himself. He jumped out of a 2-story window because he wanted to be with his grandfather in a better place. So how we speak to our children matters, that we speak truth. He might have been in a better place, but I'm gonna throw that out here, that it's not so.
That's dramatic. I would like to thank the panel again and the audience, of course, and now I would like your help. I'm going to move my chair and we are going to have our program closed by this absolutely divine union. I would like you, wherever you want to just tell me all.
I was a surprise guest this today.
Okay, do you want to go back there?
Okay.
Come sit by me.
And it is our honor. Why do they look different from that side? I'm gonna sit here.
Thank you. Well, you're very kind to ask me to say something. I think it's been said. I think you're wonderful. I have to admire all of you.
You taught us.
Only a couple.
But I've taught, I've taught Julie's taught.
Isn't that amazing? It's amazing. Well, I admire your courage, your sharing. This is new to you, I understand. And it's so important that people who have experienced this kind of devastating experience in your life, that you share that, so that we take the stigma away. The stigma is still there, doggone it. I mean, when I retired, 20 years ago. I don't know, I retired from the lake some time ago.
20 maybe, yeah. Maybe 20, yeah.
20 years, okay. And we had meetings just like this. So I'm really discouraged on one level, but I'm also hopeful on another level. And don't ever, ever give up your dreams. You said earlier you had a dream. And I had a dream to start a counseling center that was a sliding fee scale, and it still is. And that was important to me, and I hear that's important to all of you. So I thank you, I admire you for what you're doing, and keep on doing it, because that's the only way things will change. So let's give them a I'm almost speechless because I've heard
what needs to be done. I've heard prevention, I've heard intervention, and I've heard postvention, which means aftercare for survivors, meaning someone who's lost a loved one to suicide. And one of the things that, the word that keeps coming up to my mind is trust your instincts. If you're driving by a friend's neighborhood and you think, you know, I really ought to check on this person. And then you talk yourself out of it, no, they're fine. They'll think I'm crazy. And you drive them by, and then they end their lives later on. Trust your instincts. You are here because you have good instincts. Because you know this problem. And there are many, many problems in the world. You have to pick one, or maybe two or three, that you support. But it's telling the world and communicating to the world the things you've been saying. QPR means question, persuade, refer. A friend of mine started that organization, Paul Quinnett, and he's written several books. And QPR, question the person. Are you thinking of ending your life? You don't have to say the word suicide if you're afraid of it, or you think that might put it in their mind. It won't, but it may. It's a relief to them to hear somebody say that normally. And you don't have to say suicide. Are you thinking of giving up on life? Are you thinking of ending your life? Sometimes you just don't want to wake up anymore. You just want to stay asleep. There are other ways to come at that without it. And then eventually you can say, well, are you thinking of suicide? By that time you've led up to it gently, and then they can hear it. So everything you all have said, I agree with 100%. And I don't know to answer your question, whatever your question of what do we need to do, I don't know how to answer that because it's so multi-level. It's schools, it's religion, it's parenting, it's so many things that you can't put your finger on. You know, you do the parents, you teach parents coping skills, and that's what we call it. Only the Georgia legislature called it sex education. So they wouldn't pass it. Way back, they would not pass it. Like I said, we have been to Washington to get legislators interested in this issue. And I have a quick funny story. My husband and I were working there, and Jenny was there, a lot of different people came every single year. There was an organization called SPAN, Suicide Prevention Advocacy Network, and a couple, Jerry and Elsie Boyer, started it. And now it's under AFSP, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. All these organizations are still there. They don't do much cooperating anymore, but they used to. But anyway, we were in the Capitol. Jeb Bush was the governor of Florida at the time. And we had quilts. Somebody started a quilt. What was her name? Sandy Martin. Yes, Sandy Martin started an idea of putting quilts together with the faces of the loved ones who died by suicide. And every single state, except maybe one, would have a quilt that you make. And you put the face on there, and then you put a saying or something, the date they were born and the date they died. One hangs in the middle of our big rooms at the Lake Counseling Center over here on Mount Vernon Highway in Sandy Springs. So I had it under my arm. We were trying to educate the legislators so that they would pass money, that the money might help prevent suicide. Well, the money comes and it goes places you don't know where it's going, and it's like every other issue. So I had this big quilt. It was as big as that whole block right there. And I had the quilt under my arm, and I wanted Jeb Bush to see it because I thought he might get interested in suicide prevention and aftercare. So the guard was watching me very closely, and he said, "Lady, you can't open that here. You can't open that in the halls here. That's not allowed." Oh, I said, okay. So Jeb Bush comes out right at that moment, out of his door, his office, and he stands there and looks at it. And all of a sudden, I trip. I spread the quilt. Jeb Bush said, "What's going on around here?" He walks over, and I said, "Oh, this is our quilt, and this is what we do, and this is what we're trying to prevent, and we need money, and we need your help," and he was in. The guard was really annoyed with
Former actress.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In addition to writing My Son, which remains, is the best-selling book.
First one we recommend.
First one to recommend. You brought something, and in closing, tell us about this book.
Well, I wrote, I didn't mean to be an author. My father was an author, he was a writer. But I was a therapist and I worked at the Link as a director there for 36 years, I think. And we went through so much of this the same way, but I wrote after my son died, Mitch is his name, he was 20 years old. Had 3 girlfriends, promised to marry a 4th one, and got himself in a bind, didn't know how to get out of it. And I missed the signs, I just never dreamed that my son could do such a thing. I had 4 boys, and he was the second born. And I wrote this first book called My Son, A Guide to Healing After Death, Suicide and Loss. Yeah. And that was the first book that was written about suicide, with suicide in the title. And I wrote that, and then I wrote a second one, interviewing, sort of like yours, I guess we had about 30 people, but they weren't famous, they were just normal people who had suicide in their family. And they talked about what happened, what was the hardest part, what helped you the most, and where are you today? And it's all video, and it's free, it's on online, yeah, and you can get, we have some copies at the Link. And now, because I'm 92 and I'm not doing that anymore, I decided that I would write that book, so that's there. And the third one,
You know, I shocked her.
Yeah. So for my 90th birthday, I happened to know Robert Blank, who was with Home Depot, of course, you know. And I had a friend who also knew how to put things on his desk for him to sign. Well, you're in this.
I need that friend.
Talk. And so it was one of those things that I just decided I had to do this, and I put the proposal on his desk, and he signed it for my 90th birthday to give away. And so we have some copies in the back, and it would run out, right? It's a little book. I wrote it with my niece because she needed, her mother had died, and she needed to deal with her life and her mother's death. And so it's called The Little Book on Grief. What's the next part? It's right there.
I would worry.
There's sometimes concerns to consider. Right. Concerns.
And then the one-page standalone concerns is so easy and effortless.
Well, you can put it in your blue jeans pocket, pull it out, you put it in your purse, and it's
It's there.
But I love it that Arthur Blank gave you $25,000 to give away the book. To bring the book and to give it away. So I give it away to as many people, and then there are not enough, I'll bring some here, you can pick it up here. This is the way. Is that what you?
Which is great.
Yeah, go to the link, go to the link and pick it up, that would be.
We're always out too, we need another 25,000.
Yes.
Glad you worked that out. It is such an honor to meet you and to have you here. So you made this just as spectacular. Thank you so much. Goodbye to all of you, and thank you for being here for your good questions. Since she's standing, Miss Kelly Callan, who makes the trains run, would you like to say it?
No, other than, I think you already mentioned, I think y'all will be, Julie, and anybody will be in the back here. If there's anything you'd like to talk about privately, but before the panelists leave, we would like to get a group shot. If we could, please. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, so don't move quite yet, and then we'll get a shot, but thank you so much.
Thank you.